Hello and welcome back to our dialogue tutorial. This is part 3. I recommend you go through part 1 and 2 first before tackling this one, as there's a lot of setup involved. So our end goal is to get from where we left off, where we talked about signposts, so going up to signposts and interacting with them. We've done that last time. We're now getting from there to a point where we can go up to NPCs and have conversations with them. And each one have different lines of dialogue based on who you talk to. Okay, so there's a few steps involved, but it's just coding mostly. And last time we set up our dialogue structure and imported some dialogue from a CSV file, which you can open up and see here. So this is what we've done last time. Okay, so an NPC. Go add new, blueprint class, and choose character. And type in NPC to name it. Open up, and I'm going to add a static mesh to this because I don't have a skeletal one to chuck in there, and I'm just going to give it a little cone, something really simple, cone, just so I can see it when I'm playing the game, and add a box collision. So for our signpost, we've done the same thing. We added a box collision onto it, so we have a detectable area to determine whether or not the player is near it. That'll do. Okay, so go to the event graph. Now our NPC has several variables we need to first create. So click on plus variable in the bottom left here, and the first one you want to call NPC ID, and this one is an integer, and you want to make it editable. Make another one, and this one is conversation ID. Again, integer and editable. Next up is a line current, and this one is integer but not editable. And next up is my dialogue, and that will be a name and an array. So click on this little icon here and change it to this grid of 9 squares. That means it's an array. Click compile, and you want to change NPC to be 0, conversation ID to be 1 by default, line current would be 0, and my dialogue should be empty. Click compile again. Right, so they're the variables we need, and we can now begin making our character talk. So the very first thing we do is, when we begin the game, we want our character NPC to look at that data structure, this dialogue window here, and look for which ones belong to it. So look at the NPC ID and see which ones belong to it. Okay, so that's what we're going to do first. So right click, begin play. Now off of there, you drag out and just type in the words data table, and you'll see get data table row names, and this spits out an array of names for each row. So if I choose from now drop down the dialogue data table, this will spit out all the NPC lines of dialogue here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's what the array will be. Just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So with the array names, the row name, sorry, we're going to chuck that into a for each loop, like so, and connect it up. And the for each loop is going to go through every single row, break that row down, look for the NPC ID. If it matches, we're going to record the row name that belongs to that NPC. So with the array element, come out of here and do data table and get data table row. Hook that up to the loop body. Choose our dialogue table from the data table options, and where it says out row, you can drag this out and choose break dialogue structure. This basically takes the row data and breaks it down into its individual columns. So now we have access to the NPC ID, so we can now check that against this one to see if they're the same. So I'm going to drag that out here, choose get, and then from here do equals, and this will now go up to a branch. Okay, so there. So if these are the same, what we want to record is the row name that we've got. So from the array element, we're going to save it into my dialog. So at the end here, I'm going to drag out my dialog, get, and drag out here and do add. And you'll have an option now to add a name to this dialog window, to this my dialog array. So I'm going to click and drag out again to here, and just tidy it up a little bit, make it a bit more readable, like so. And that's all you have to do to get the dialog. So now it knows what number lines in that table belong to it. Okay, click compile, and now we're on to the next bit. So the next bit is to make this character have an interact like the signpost. So previously we made an interface which is common functions that can be shared amongst multiple actors and have different outcomes. So click on class settings, and you'll see there's no interfaces currently implemented. Choose add and click on interact I, which we made in a previous episode. After you click compile, if you right click, you should now have access to that interface's functions. So type in interact, and you'll see here call add event interact, and you know you've got the right one because it will have this little blueprint icon up here. This means it's from an interface. Okay, so with this interface, we are going to increase the current line that we're on, and then create a dialog window. So I'm going to increment by an int and plug in our line current into there. So line current is currently 0. So that means as soon as you interact with it, it'll go up to 1 and then create a dialog window for that 1 line of dialog. And if you interact with it again, it'll be 2, and so on and so forth. Now for the next bit, I'm going to create my own little function. So to create a function, you go to the left hand side here and you've got functions here. Choose the plus symbol to create your own one, and I'm going to call mine dialog create. And if I go back to my event graph, I can now add that function to here, dialog create. So functions are a nice way to handle repeated code and or just tidy up and keep code separate from each other. It makes it a little bit easier to control and manage. So with this dialog create, we're going to create the widget and display it on the screen, and then change the text to be a particular line of dialog. So come up here and we do create widget, choose the dialog widget, and the owning player will be the player controller. So get player controller. After that, we want to store it as a variable. So with the return value, drag out and choose promote to variable, and name it something appropriate. So I'm going to call mine dialog widget, and after that I want to add it to the viewport. So drag out of here, add to viewport, and hook it all up like so. So now we add it to the viewport, we now want to get a particular line of dialog to send to our widget variable. So previously we made a widget variable in our widget for our text. So our text here is bound to dialog text, which it says here, and is a variable here. Okay, so we're going to try and access that variable from our NPC to set a line of dialog to show. So to get that line of dialog, again, I'm going to make another function. So add new function, call it dialog get line, and I'm going to chuck that onto my dialog create after add to viewport, dialog get line. So dialog get line is a new function, and I'm going to have it have an output, so it spits out something. So dialog get line will have an output, which if you click on here, you can set what inputs and outputs it has. The output, click on plus, and I'm going to name it returned line, and it's going to be a type of text. Okay, and you'll see if I compile it and go back to my dialog create, you can see now this output pin is available on our dialog get line function. So whilst I'm here, I might as well hook this back into my widget's dialog text variable. So if you drag out your dialog widget reference, which we saved earlier, and choose get, and from here you can set dialog text like so, and plug it into return line. Click compile. Okay, so that will now get the line and put it into that text field on our widget. So what's left now is to do that get line. So to do that, we're going to break this up first and move this out of the way, because we have to do some work to get to it. So we want to access all the dialog lines in particular, and get the individual text from each line for the one that we're currently doing. So from get line, we want to type in data table, and you want to get table row. Oh, pardon me. Sorry. My bad. Break that off. We need to do a for each loop first. So for each loop, and plug it into the body. And the array you want is the my dialog. So get the my dialog, get, and plug it into the array. And the data table we want to choose is the dialog one, and the array element should go to row name. So this will go through all the rows. And remember, this is an array which contains all the row IDs of the lines of dialog that belong to this NPC. So it's only going to look at its lines that belong to it, no matter how long or short it is. So it'll go through this array and look at the rows that match this particular NPC's ID. And the out row, we can then break again to get the various columns related to that row. So now we've got the row of the NPC. So we don't need to check the NPC ID here now. Now we just need to check the conversation ID and the line ID to the current line, and then save this line of dialog as an output. So what we do is we come out of conversation ID and do equals equals, and line ID do the same, equals, and you want to plug in our own variables for that our NPC has. So choose get for conversation ID, plug it in, line current, plug it in, and then hook these two Boolean results out to an AND node, and that go up to a branch, which will plug in all the way back here. Okay. So now we've only got a particular line that we want, this line that matches our conversation ID and our line current. So it should only be one, but to be safe, we want to make sure we're safe, we're going to add this to an array. So we're going to make a new local variable which only this function can access. So there's local variables down here. You can click on this and create returned lines. And returned lines will be of text and an array by changing it up here. And drag out returned lines, get, and from here choose add. And return lines to true, to add, and we add this line of dialog to our return lines array. Okay. Just tidy this up a little bit, make it a bit more readable. Cool. Okay, so that's going to happen on a loop. So the reason why I did it as an array was just in case someone made a mistake in that Excel document and made two line IDs match with the conversation IDs, and you got duplicates basically. So we're backing ourselves up by making sure that we've only got one line out. Okay, so once we've done the loop, you'll have the completed line come out, and after it's completed, we want to check the size of our returned lines array to make sure it's only one. So if it's completed, come out here and go branch, and with the branch you want to go get returned lines, and off of there type in length, and from there go it's equal to 1. So this does two things. This first of all checks to make sure that we've only got one line coming out, This also makes sure that we've actually got a line coming out at all. So if we haven't got a line coming out at all, it means there's no rows that matched our current line ID, meaning that we've gone beyond the conversation, that we've ended the conversation and we're asking for a line that doesn't exist, which is useful because that means that we can now tell it when to destroy the current dialog. So if it's equal to 1 and true, our return node will come into play, and returned line come out of this array, just get, and type in the word get, and we want the first one, which is 0, because it's 0 based, and that's all there is for that bit. The next bit though is for false. So what if we haven't got any lines of dialogue or too many lines of dialogue? Well, in that case we were going to just break out and destroy the dialog window so it doesn't show anymore. So go down to false and pull it out, and you want to type in remove from it's not showing again, damn thing. Okay, just drag out your dialog widget variable here, just get, and from there do remove from parent, and false can hook up to that there. So when we remove a dialog widget, we want to reset that dialog widget to be blank. So go here to set dialog widget, and you do not change this drop down. So this basically sets the dialog widget to be null and void and blank, which is good. That's what we want. We don't want to have any data in there whatsoever. And we also want to reset our current line back to 0. So drag that out and choose set, and set that back to 0. So it restarts the conversation back to 0 and deletes all dialogue happening on the screen. And click compile. So to recap, our get line is going through our array of recorded lines that we know that belong to our NPC, looking for what ones match our current conversation and current line, and saving each line of dialogue into an array. We are checking then the array length and whether it's equal to 1. So we've only got one line coming out. If we only got one line, return it back to our dialog create, and which then puts it into the widget. If there is no lines dialog, or there's more than one, we're going to delete the dialog window and reset its variable and reset the line current. Dialog window carries on and puts it into the dialog widget, which is effectively the end of that. So hopefully this will work. I think I've covered it all. I always forget something, so let's just double check. So let's pull out our NPC here, and we can now access our NPC ID and default details over here in the corner. I change it to 1, enter, and click play. Go up to it and push E. Hey, and now it works. Oh, almost. It stacks up. So got an issue there where it's creating multiple dialog windows. So let's have a look where I went wrong. Well, not went wrong, but what have I forgotten? What have I missed? So we've got begin play. Oh, that's right. Okay, so dialog create. We've created this line of dialogue, and you may remember on our signposts over here, when we created it, we then done an is valid check to make sure it wasn't still on the screen. If it wasn't a screen, we removed it before we created another one. Okay, just to be safe. So what you want to do on NPC, something similar, and you want to break that off and do an is valid, and connect dialog widget to it. So if dialog widget is open already, we're going to just change its line of dialog. We're not going to bother doing all this bit. We just change the line of dialog that appears, and if it is not valid, we're going to create that dialog widget. So it's not valid, you can just go straight to there. If it is valid, we're just going to do this bit here, dialog get line, and set the text. So I'm going to copy that and paste it over here, like so. So that will just change the line that's currently going on. So dialog get line, return line, sets it to this. Okay. Click compile, and let's see if that's fixed that issue. There you go. So you notice that my text there is not wrapping and it's just going off the edges. So to fix that, go into my dialog widget, click on my text block here, and you'll see an option for auto wrap text. Choose that and click compile. and that should fix that issue. I have to make the border a little bit bigger, but there you go. Excellent. So now, if I wanted to add more NPCs, all I have to do is drag out another NPC, change its NPC ID here, and that's it. And it'll read from that document the correct lines. As simple as that. Hopefully that made sense. There's quite a lot involved here, but if you have any questions or do get stuck, please leave a comment below and I'll try and answer them as best I can, as quickly as I can. Please like and share this and subscribe for more future videos in Unreal Engine 4. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you next time. Ciao for now.